Hello, salam alaikum, and welcome to this video. I'm not a Muslim and you are wondering what assalamu alaikum means, then it means peace be upon you. It is a greeting that Muslims use for one another, because I do hope that some non-Muslims are watching this video because it is a very important topic. Now, just to introduce myself, if you don't know me, then my name is Ellie. I am from the UK. I am a travel blogger and tour organizer by profession now, and I became a Muslim a couple of months ago. So a YouTube platform that I have to talk about Islam and really clear up a lot of the misconceptions around Islam. So people know that it's really not a religion that they may have heard of, all the negative things that they've heard. And also because some people, they want to become Muslim, like myself, but there are also some negative things that they've heard, and I want to use this video to clear those things up. So if that sounds like what you're interested in, then keep on watching. And let's start with the most obvious misconception, just to get it out of the way, that Muslims are terrorists. Now, this is of course not true. It is true that Islam is a religion of peace. Unfortunately, there are bad people all over the world. And it just so happens that when they are Muslim, it is highlighted in the media, so people think it is always Muslims. It's interesting, when other deaths occur anywhere else around the world, do they point out their religion? No, they do not. I don't know, the media have got something against Islam. My opinion is that the media needs us to remain in fear. It needs us to remain in fear, to listen to what the government is saying, and right now Islam is the best way to keep people scared, and so that's what they're focusing on. But I did just want to clear that up and just say it because as number one, because it is the most terrible misconception and it's just not true. If you really think that, then I suggest to go to a Muslim area near where you live, have some food, talk to the people, and you will realize that this is not the case. The second misconception is that Muslims and Islam are the same thing. Now, even at the start of this year, just like 10 months ago, I was wondering, what is a Muslim and what is Islam? And the difference is that Islam is the religion, and Muslims are the people that follow the religion of Islam. So the term Muslim is actually an Arabic word so Muslims are submitters to God, to Allah. And another thing is that God in Arabic is Allah. So actually, even Christian Arabs still use the word Allah. That's another little 2.1 misconception, because a lot of people think that the actual term Allah is just for Islam, and it's actually not. It's an Arabic word. So no matter what faith people are, if they speak Arabic, then they will use the term Allah, because that means God in Arabic. Now, the reason I'm talking about this point is because, again, going back to negative things people may have heard, you've really got to separate the two. So we cannot judge the religion of what Muslims do. And there's also something else, just quickly, is that some Muslims are not even practicing Muslims. So I myself would say I am a practicing Muslim. I wouldn't have become Muslim to not be a practicing Muslim. That means that I pray 5 times a day. I'm going to fast when it comes around. And I'm trying to live my life according to the Quran and the hadiths and the examples that our Prophet, peace be upon him, left for us. But there are other people who were born into the religion of Islam, just like Christianity, just like Hinduism, and they don't practice Islam. So we can't judge their behavior as the whole of the religion. The third misconception is that for Arabs or Eastern countries, and it is not for white Western people like me. That is not true. Yes, Islam started in Arabia, it started in the Middle World, and then it spread. And it did happen to spread to, obviously, those other Middle Eastern countries, Northern Africa. It did also make its way to Eastern countries like Malaysia and Indonesia. Indonesia has the most Muslims per country in the world. Really good book right now, and it's talking about the history of Islam. And I think a lot of people don't realize is that Spain has a huge Islamic history in there as well. So Islam did come to Europe. The point that I'm trying to get to is that it is not just an Arab religion. It is not just an Eastern religion, an Asian religion, an African religion. Anyone can be Muslim. That's why I became a Muslim. And I think it's quite confusing for, like, maybe my family thought it was confusing when I said I'm a Muslim, because it's a very foreign religion to a lot of people in Western countries. And that's just the case. It is. But that does not mean that we cannot be Muslims. This is that not all Arabs are even Muslim. There are Arab Christians, there are Arab Jews. So the idea that Islam is just an Arab religion is also ridiculous, because not even all Arabs are Muslim. The fourth misconception is that Islam is forced upon people, which is definitely not the case. I can confirm as a revert Muslim that I was not forced into Islam at all. So hopefully that's one good example. The second good example is that, like I said, Islam spread. And if Islam was forced on people, then countries would be 100% majority Muslim. A good example of this is India. There are a lot of Muslims in India. It has the second most highest amount of Muslims in the country, even though they only represent about 15% of the country. Now, if people were forced into Islam in the past, then that percentage would be much higher. People were not forced into. It was a choice, and it still is. Number 5, something, I don't know, a little bit more lighthearted or maybe more random than you might expect, is that misconception that Muslims don't like dogs. Or if you are a Muslim, you cannot have a dog. Now, honestly, as someone who was learning about Islam earlier this year, because I'd heard that Muslims don't like dogs. I'd heard that, especially in certain countries like Indonesia, the reason that area doesn't have dogs, like the Gili Islands that I was living on, is because Muslims don't like dogs. And I remember thinking, like, I really can't commit to a religion that doesn't like a dog. I'm going to insert a picture of my dog here because I love him so, so much. Now, one thing I do know is that our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, used to care for animals a lot. There is a story about him getting water from a well for a dog that needed water. And so definitely Islam does not like animals. Like, it is very, very much in the religion that Muslims must look after animals, which I think actually probably surprises some people. It definitely surprised me, because I have not always seen that kind of behavior around the world. Again, this is why I'm making this video. These are misconceptions that I've picked up from travels and my life. I also think it's a big culture thing. In places like Indonesia, they say that the dogs will stop the angels coming, but other Muslims probably listening to this right now will say, what? I've never heard that before. So I also question that it's cultural. And I don't know if this is true. This is personally my opinion, is that I'm pretty sure that the dogs of Arabia 1400 years ago were very, very different from our domesticated dogs right now. So although people were told, and actually in Islam it is said that you can have a dog for protection, but the dogs of 100 years ago were not domesticated animals. It's like the dingoes in Australia right now. They are dogs. Would you want them in your house? No. Would you want my dog in your house? Yes. Yeah, it's just kind of a more light-hearted one, but definitely if you are thinking about becoming Muslim, please do not let this put you off. I've had at least 2 people in my DMs on Instagram, I'll put my account down here, saying that they don't think they can become Muslim because Islam doesn't like dogs, and that is just terrible to hear. We really need to get some education on that. Number 6 is that Islam forces marriage on people. This is definitely not true. I think a lot of people, if you know of Muslims, maybe you've heard that there was like arranged marriages, and I've heard that the more correct term to use is arranged introductions, because people, yes, are introduced, whether that's by family or friends, which, let's face it, is a bit like going on a blind date, and no one normally says anything bad about blind dates. And the key thing to know here is that in Islam, both people have the right to say no. So although they are arranged to meet, both the woman and both the man, after meeting their partner, however, can both say no, and that is totally fine. And it is very clear in Islam that they both have the rights to say no. Therefore, it can't be forced. Now, where this misconception does come from, I totally admit, is from countries that are predominantly Islamic, and there are forced marriages within their culture. And most people have probably heard about forced marriage of some sort, but this is not Islam. Islam does not say that. It is their culture. Number 7, a very, very hot topic. I can't believe I've got to number 7 without talking about women in Islam. And the misconception is that women have no rights in Islam. Now, again, if that was true, I would not have become Muslim. Now, when you look into the history, Islam actually gave women their rights. So 1400 years ago, when Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was alive in Arabia, women had no rights. And that was the same in many places around the world. Girls were often killed as soon as they were born. They were seen as a shame upon the family. And then Islam came and people started converting to Islam. And one of the pieces of the religion is that a girl is a blessing, a baby girl is a blessing. And it gave women their rights in terms of marriage, in terms of divorce, in terms of inheritance, things that they didn't have before. And it's the same now. Women do have rights in Islam. While we're on the topic of women, I think we also still need to address the misconception that women are forced to cover, or that they thought they cover because of men. Now, this was something that honestly I used to think when I saw women completely covered, especially in the big burqa. I thought that they were forced to do it, their husbands had forced them to do it, their fathers, their brothers. And this is not the case. Now, obviously, as you can see, I am not wearing a hijab, but I am a Muslim. So that's one example of the fact that that is wrong. And the second thing, you don't know unless you really start to learn about it and speak to Muslim women. And that's the reason I'm making this video, is that actually Muslim women cover for God. And to tell a Muslim woman that they have been forced to cover when they themselves are choosing to cover, which is very much the case, I mean, it's so disrespectful. No, they're covering for themselves. They are covering for God. And the other reason Muslim women do also cover, and this is one of the reasons that I would like to start wearing the hijab more in future, inshallah, is because it shows that you're Muslim. So for me right now, walking down the street, people don't know I'm Muslim, of course. But if I was to be wearing the hijab, then they do. And I have even noticed just in the very recent times I've been Muslim, there's something really, really nice about other Muslims seeing me, knowing I'm a Muslim, and there's just a really nice connection there. So yeah, if you can't tell already, that is all through choice. It is not forced. Now, we are nearly at the end, is that Islam is restrictive and it's not fun. I actually asked on my Instagram for some ideas of what Muslims think other people think about Islam, and one of the popular responses I got back was that Muslims can't have fun, and this is definitely not the case. Now, I definitely agree from someone who grew up in a Western country that there are ideas of Islam that do seem restrictive, and that you can't do this and you should be doing this. But that's just restrictive in comparison to what someone else thinks is normal. That's something key to think about there. And then the second thing is that when Islam tells us we shouldn't be doing this, like we shouldn't be drinking alcohol, we shouldn't be smoking, we shouldn't be gambling, they're all things that people know they shouldn't be doing anyway. It's just that in a lot of countries they are legal, but it does not mean that we should be doing it. These things are so bad for our health and our well-being, and Islam has our health and our well-being at its highest priority. And therefore, just because Muslims can't do many things that other people deem as fun, it does not mean that they can't have fun. In fact, one of the things that really drew me to Islam so much is the community aspect. Muslims just get together so much. There is so much community there within the friends and within the family. And I would say that they have a lot more fun, a lot more social gatherings, a lot more social events, a lot more just socialness in their lives than people that are not Muslim. And that is fun. Being around people is fun. And so the idea that Muslims can't have fun is also just a ridiculous misconception. And that's just being compared to like Western modern ideology, and therefore, yeah, it's just wrong. Now, also a note on the term of restrictiveness. Now, I heard this from a man called Mohammed Hijab in an interview, and he said, because some people were saying that they'd fallen out of Islam because it was restrictive. And he said, if you're not restricted by a religion, you're going to be restricted by something else. And that just hit me so much because, yes, although there are restrictions in Islam, people that are not Muslims, it's not like they don't have restrictions, they still do. We all have restrictions in this world. And personally, I would prefer for my restrictions to be dominated by a religion that actually cares about me than a government who doesn't care about me. And the last one, at number 10, we've spoken about Muslim women. Let's speak about Muslim men. So the last misconception is that Muslim men all have more than one wife, which is definitely not true. Now, it is true that Muslim men can have up to 4 wives, and this makes sense when we go back in history, because 1400 years ago in Arabia, when Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was alive and people were converting to Islam, there was a lot of fighting, there was a lot of wars, and therefore a lot of men were dying, women were being left as widows. So it made sense that a man could marry more than one woman, because in Islam, although it says they can marry 4 women, they do have to treat them all the same. That comes to finances, it comes to the time they spend with them and how much they love them, I believe. Now, I'm pretty sure that's probably quite difficult for a man to do, and that's probably why a lot of men right now do not have more than one wife. But it made sense back then, because if a woman had lost her husband, yes, she could still work, because Muslim women can work, they could work back then, but she also had to look after the kids, look after the home, which is still hard to do right now. So it made sense that a man could marry and therefore provide for up to 4 women, which completely made sense. The other key thing to know is that when a man starts to take then more than one wife, the other wives and the other wife, they have to know about it and agree with it. It does not happen as like an affair behind their back, which very much happens in other non-Muslim societies. So all the women have to know that they are first wife, second wife, and that has to be agreed upon. But these days, from most of the Muslim men that I've spoken to, it does not seem that like men have more than one wife right now. I think that financially catering for one family is enough. So that's just a negative stereotype that is put on Muslim men that is not correct. And again, even though the origin comes from something correct, when you really learn about it, it does make sense. It's just that it doesn't seem to happen these days, and therefore no one really has to worry about it. So thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you have enjoyed it, and if you've got to the end, then thank you so much. Be sure to follow me on Instagram, because I post daily on there. Give this video a like and let me know in the comments if you liked it, but also if there are other misconceptions you know about Islam, maybe because you're Muslim or you're non-Muslim. What have you heard that are negative things? And I will hopefully do a part 2, inshallah. Make sure you're subscribed if you want to see more videos from my journey to Islam. So